One more, if you are in Chicago these days, the APS upgrade is the talk of the town, I would say. And I'm delighted that we have a speaker who is going to tell us more about the changing role of HDF5 related to the upgrade.
Yes, thank you to the organizers. Thank you, audience, for sticking around. I'm very happy to close the Argonne session, apparently, and also perhaps the last official talk of the group meeting. My name is Tejas Guruswamy. I'm actually a condensed matter physicist, but over time, my work with detectors has become more and more about what happens to the data after it leaves the detectors. I'm not here to present any new results, more as to inform you all about what's happening at the Advanced Photon Source, as Gerd currently introduced, and maybe present some questions that we are all thinking about that we would welcome your input on. I won't name all of the colleagues who are working on this project because it would be a very long list for a lightning talk, but I will say that the keywords to look for are the Beamline Data Pipelines project. And this is an overhead view of the APS. If you've never seen it, it is a large synchrotron just outside Chicago. So just a quick few APS facts as they currently stand. This is a hard X-ray synchrotron, so higher energy than the average synchrotron in the US. Electrons are accelerated to 7 GeV, for those who were studying their particle physics after Mark's opening talk. We do a mixture of different scientific techniques, imaging, diffraction, spectroscopy, which generate data in different formats and that need different types of analysis. There are about 70 parallel experimental stations, each generating data in their own unique way. So the purpose of the figure on the right, you don't need to look too much at the text, just be impressed at the different colors which represent different fields of science that use the different beamlines around the APS. And when operating, we're going 24/7, 9 months a year. We have more than 5,000 different users who want to be able to take the data that they measured at APS and do all kinds of unique things with them. So as of April 2023, construction has actually begun. We are replacing the entire storage ring of the APS with new magnets with a new design, which will result in a 500 times increase in coherence and X-ray brightness at most energies. So that corresponds to, on the plot on the right-hand side, the solid line, the dashed line going to the solid line. And note this is a log scale on the y-axis. So we're really talking about just orders of magnitude change in the number of photons available for a given experiment per second. What's this used for is better measurement of dilute samples, scanning over different points, nanoscale focusing, and the entire beamlines, including especially the detectors, are being upgraded to take advantage of this increased flux. So they're measuring faster, they're measuring for shorter time periods, the scanning of parameters is happening quicker. And quite a lot of the rest of the APS is being overhauled as well. We've got new network, including terabit scale connections to ALCF, new data storage, petabytes, and compute infrastructure throughout. Just to emphasize this point about new detectors, the scatter plot that I've got at the top right is a random selection of detectors that were being considered for different beamlines at APS-U. The diagonal lines represent data rates in gigabytes per second. So APS-U is basically taking us from detectors that, when operating, produced about a gigabyte per second to many tens of gigabytes per second in continuous data acquisition modes. Overall, we expect to be going from generating about 10 petabytes a year in aggregate across the APS to more than 100 petabytes a year. But I will give the caveat that this is not uniform data that's all for the same purpose. This is divided among dozens of different experimental techniques, and each one wants to do something very different with the data. During this upgrade, we've also got some updated science goals related to what happens to our measurements. Real-time feedback has become a priority, more use of ALCF facilities that are on site, and fair data policies are becoming more mandatory from DOE. So this has given us an opportunity to really overhaul both our batch and stream data processing that we have many years of experience with, but aren't really suitable for the new goals. hence the Beamline Data Pipelines project that I mentioned at the start. So as an example, the current ALCF machine Polaris will be almost entirely dedicated to APS computation once Aurora is online. So HDF is a key part of our strategy going forward. We've been using HDF at APS for quite a while, but it's now pretty much the standard when a scientist comes to us and asks us, what are we going to use as our on-disk format? We can finally tell people who were working with MATLAB and millions of TIFFs that we're not really going to support them anymore. So, of course, the features of HDF5 that make it suitable for this, we all know this. It's a very stable format. It's excellent for combining data and metadata. It's fair use principles, etc., etc. Besides HDF5, we're trying to leverage other existing solutions wherever possible. We already have the control system known as EPICS and the plugins for its data acquisition modules called areaDetector, which enable writing directly from a detector to HDF5. And actually, the latest generation of EPICS has a network protocol that supports moving around structured data in very much the same kind of look as an HDF5 file. So that's very convenient in terms of writing applications that can read from disk or from a network stream. We're using relatively public schema definitions from the Data Exchange and Nexus projects, which are built on top of HDF5, of course. We're using the BlueSky orchestration and metadata collection packages that have been developed over at Brookhaven. And I'll just draw attention to a UI that they've been working on called Tiled, which actually allows slicing and exporting data that's stored on HDF5 in the backend into CSV or individual images or whatever it is that the end user wants without them needing to download the entire large binary file. We're also using University of Chicago Globus for inter-institution data management, transfers back and forth and so on, and also HPC workflow execution on ALCF and other DOE compute facilities. So since we're moving into a discussion period, I thought it would be best to finish up with some of the questions that we're working on. So in some cases, some of the processes that we're working with need to run very fast. Some of them don't mind the speed. Some of them really are stretching the capabilities of our storage layers, and parallel operation is important. However, beamline scientists don't really want to be using MPI unless they're really forced to because they're working on full-scale HPC settings. So can we make a kind of compromise solution for those beamline scientists using external multiple file links that allows some kind of simple multi-process-based solution for them? We're making increasing use of GPU-based analysis. We've been using some of the libraries that NVIDIA have been producing, Rapids, for example, with limited success so far. Perhaps we can talk more if you have experience in this area. But we're very much interested in accelerating HDF5 loading to and from GPU network streams without having to do expensive conversions of data formats. Some of our techniques, for example, XPCS, which stands for X-ray photon correlation spectroscopy, first of all, generate very sparse data, and secondly, are requiring data layouts that are efficient on FPGA, CPU, and GPU, because through their analysis workflow, it's moving across all these different architectures. So I'm very glad to hear Elena's talk earlier today. We look forward to an HDF5 structure that can accommodate some more exotic data layouts, if you allow me to call it that. And of course, the eternal question that everyone is proposing AI and data mining projects to DOE these days. So they've told us that we need to store data with that in mind. So at the moment, our storage level plans are pretty much very simple, block level storage with HDF files on top, but perhaps we need to rethink that and come up with a storage layer that actually understands something about our structured data and therefore is more easily queryable and mineable. And in fact, I just highlight that I was browsing the HDF website and found a nice picture about it from Mark back in 2017 on the pros and cons of the multiple file approach. So I just thought it was a very appropriate for what I was thinking about. So thanks. And actually, that's it. So yeah, thanks again for the opportunity and questions.
Actually, I have two questions. The first question, you mentioned areaDetector. I know that that software uses a swimmer that requires GPFS. So how are you guys dealing with this? Because most of you, it's network system.
Yeah, so areaDetector, as far as I understand it, swimmer is actually an option. And although it was implemented, I think we almost always run with it off at the moment.
I see. Okay. And the second one, I want to use Dell storage.
I believe that would apply if we're going to Aurora. I don't know how many of our beamline workflows have committed to using Aurora. I think right now they're trying to stay a bit agnostic. But it's certainly something we'll look into more once we have more people committing to Aurora versus Polaris.
Other questions?
You work on the GPU type of thing, right? With Aurora, it's an Intel GPU. Did you find any interesting difference between the Intel GPU and the CUDA and NVIDIA GPUs?
This is a question that I'm sure is disturbing a lot of the computer scientists at Argonne. Thankfully, I'm more on the detector side, so I don't have to worry about it so much. But absolutely, I'm sure that they're using, I don't know all the details, but I'm sure that if they don't already exist, they're trying to come up with these abstraction layers that will allow switching back and forth between CUDA and Intel. But yes, I know that it has been something that a lot of work had to go into.
Other questions?
Just a comment, there is HDF5 has GPU direct write driver, right? Created by LBL, and it's supported, right? Right, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, I don't know how to use it yet, so maybe I can come and ask you for a direct tutorial.